The Space Marines are one of, if not the most iconic thing in all of Warhammer 40k, and saying that is like saying the sun is bright. You're not wrong, but just a little obvious. Yet for being one of the most iconic things in 40k, they are also one of the most diverse. No two Space Marine chapters are the same, and all of them are unique and different. Some of them are virtuous, amazing, awesome, and goddammit, you just love them. But those we are not talking about today. No, ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about these guys. The Space Marines who make you question, why on earth did the God Emperor even make these bastards? Because in today's Warhammer 40k lore video, ladies and gents, today we're discussing the top 5 most dickish Space Marine chapters. So strap on in and buckle up, and let's get cracking on with today's video. Alright, so starting up with number 5, we have the Doom Warriors. Now, Doom Warriors are here as kind of a little bit of a maybe because they don't really want to be dicks on purpose, but they kinda are. You see, the Doom Warriors have a unique quirk that's rather rubbish, to be frank. They have a malfunctioning capsaicin node. For those who don't know, the capsaicin node is that special bit of gene seed that allows a Space Marine to slip into a coma and sleep for a couple years. This, however, means that they can't sleep at all, ever. Due to this, it has made them very upset. Like, you think you hate mornings, my brother, every morning is 24/7 for these guys. But because of this final boss of insomnia, the Doom Warriors are extremely dour. They're also known for being somewhat apathetic, as a shoulder shrug is a common gesture used by the chapter. Now say what you will about a Space Marine, but the fact of the matter is, seeing those two giant chunks of ceramite go up and down like it's just a goddamn Sunday morning, that's a unique thing for a Space Marine. But then that begs the question, Brad, they're just sleep deprived. Why does that make them dicks? Well, I don't know if you ever been around somebody who didn't get a good night's sleep, but they're not exactly the most pleasant chaps. And the Doom Warriors are that to the nth degree. But now more about the character of the Doom Warriors. But rather than hearing me waffle on about it, let's hear straight from the horse's mouth. Taken from the Emperor's Tears. With a noble history stretching back thousands of years, the Doom Warriors had long specialized in campaigns of cleansing, which appealed to their saturnine turn of character. The result of the defect in the capsaicin node, some said. Not only was it said that Doom Warriors did not sleep, they required no hope, no cause to fight in the name of the Emperor. They were a morose, moody chapter, bound together by a mutual misanthropy for those members of the Imperium who failed to see the galaxy's hopelessness. The nearest a Doom Warrior came to happiness was reveling in hopelessness by immersing himself in its bloodshed and destruction that made us formidable warriors as existed in the galaxy. And from that nice, neat little description, we can see they are hopeless, just as their name supplies, doom. They are apathy made manifest. There is doom and nothing but. For what on earth was humanity born to do except to die? Lovely little bunch, aren't they? But this deprivation of life probably comes from the fact that they just can't sleep. Sleep not only makes you feel better, but also affects a lot of stuff up in the brain. But anything, that's just my opinion. But regardless of why they are like this, it is their belief that doom comes to all. That doom is an accepted path, and so is death. Death, destruction, and carnage are all that follows. So, why rage against it? Why worry about it? Why fight it? Accept the destruction that was long ordained since the day of thy birth. Or something like that. Again, not the most pleasant bunch. And you can definitely see why someone may not think so highly of them when you just had your whole world and home absolutely brutalized by something that kills you. And kills you in very many different ways. Because these fellows will use anything from psychonic torpedoes even to life eater viruses. Thus, they have specialized in exterminatus campaigns. Not just exterminatus campaigns, but also cleansing operations. Anything that involves them destroying a large amount of something, which is usually civilian populations, they take, because it allows them to release some of that built-up frustration. They also venerate death. So, imagine this. You're just a random farmer in a random world. Your governor decided he didn't want to pay taxes anymore, so he decided to rebel. And you just had to make do. You were conscripted, you're ready, you're there, then all of a sudden, these big silver bastards come running down from space, pop open with bolters, flamers, heavy las cannons, and every goddamn thing in between, and proceed to turn you and your best mates into Swiss cheese. You, however, by the grace of the God Emperor alive, managed to survive, only to come home realizing that an 8-foot tall demigod just helped your wife do her best cosplay as a jam of strawberry jelly. And as you sit there crying over your now fruity and spreadable missus, you get this big giant silver bastard who simply walks up, and shrugs his shoulders. They are not dickish on purpose, but the fact of the matter is, that is a pretty dick move. Yet these sons of Guilliman are indeed efficient, as their primal progenitor would so decree. Though, however, this efficiency isn't always a boon. Sometimes this one-tone nature of them leads them into some troubles, such as on the world of Carnage. Carnage was an Imperial world, however, it rebelled. The usual nonsense about the Imperium being just rubbish, and then of course a few civil wars and some religious strife thrown in the mix, you get a powder keg of comeuppance. Thus the Imperium decided that the best thing to do was to exterminate the planet. Why? I don't know, some High Lord felt like it. So basically the Doom Warriors were sent in there to escort the Admech who had a virus bomb. But not just any virus bomb, an upgraded virus bomb, known as the Emperor's Tears. The Doom Warriors being the Doom Warriors, they deployed it and everything, they were right as rain. Though it turns out that there was something wrong with this virus. And even something more wrong with the Adeptus Mechanicus lad that created it. And it would be one hell of a reveal. Taken from Tears of the Emperor. The torpedo struck the upper atmosphere like splashes of quicksilver. Through the viewing bays of the launch arcade, the disintegration was beautiful, their payload sparkling and glinting in the sun's light, though dwarfed by the sheer scale of the planet, and soon lost in its thick atmosphere. The Emperor's Tears had immediate effect. As the lower atmosphere was punctured, great dark clouds of dead matter billowed into space. It was the dying bacteria that lived in the planet's ammonia-rich atmosphere. As life increased in complexity and frequency towards the planet's surface, such dark clouds became stains, racing across the planet, like oil upon water, contaminating every iota of life with death, robbing all existence of being. Clouds of dead and decaying matter mushroomed into space, propelled by the violence of their own destruction. The hive minds became still within moments. Carnage became a place of peace. Orbital scans indicated that death had descended upon the planet. Servitors croaked and drooled as they calculated the awesome power of the Emperor's compassion. Slane raised an eyebrow. What the old Life Eater virus could accomplish in hours was happening in moments. The universe had just become a little darker. Within minutes, Carnage was dead. And then it happened. Carnage came back to life. Servitors reeled off impossible data readings. Reams of script and punch parchment spooled onto the deck in untidy heaps. Lights blinked and klaxons roared through the launch arcade. Elsewhere in the Emperor's despair, the ship's great logic engine struggled to compute the surge in planetary life sign. The ship's very machine spirit cried out in confusion, causing whole galleries of hardwired tech adepts to die instantly. Most of the ship's astropaths prepared for the planet's psychic death died in the aftershock of its rebirth. Slane was unsure what he was watching, but he didn't like the rolling atmosphere. It swirled across the planet at such speed that much of it escaped the planet's gravity sink and dissipated into space. Bruised swathes of remaining cloud hung over the planet's dark continents. Storm systems reared up in great thunderheads like vast scabs. Skane had never seen a planet look so wrong. Outside the Eye of Terror. By the Golden Throne, he muttered, touching his breastplate softly. Rotto laughed, his binary inflection suddenly thick and organic. A cry of triumph. It was even audible over the sound of the oxygen exchanges. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, for it turns out that Rotto, the Adeptus Mechanicus tech priest in question, was in fact corrupted by Nurgle, and the Life Eater virus that he made into the Emperor's Tears was not actually the Emperor's Tears, but rather Nurgle's blessing made manifest. And just like that, with one press of a button, an Imperial world in rebellion became a Chaos world, united in disease and pestilence. Again, bit of a whoopsie-daisy, but it's kind of hard to blame the Doom Warriors for this, they don't really know, but I happen to think that if they were a little bit more concerned with, I don't know, why the Adeptus Mechanicus guy was being weird, rather than whole doom ye, doom ye, doom ye, they might have been able to find it. But hey, hindsight is 20/20 and all that, so maybe cut the Doom Boys a little bit of slack. By the way, doom ye is literally their battle cry. Not gonna lie, it's kinda hard. But all in all, the Doom Warriors are dickish by accident. They're just really sleepy and very sad and pretty much depressed. And sometimes when you're upset, you do things that you don't mean to do. The same, however, cannot be said for our next chapter on our list, the Star Phantoms. The Star Phantoms are a rather mysterious and morose chapter. No one really knows where they came from, but it's highly speculated that they are members. Though interestingly enough, we actually get in-canon sources that are like, hey, no, we are in fact not Dark Angels. And both the Dark Angels and the Star Phantoms say this. So much so that the Star Phantoms consider this a point of honor, and that even mentioning it makes them rather offended. And this is why I without a doubt say they are 100% descended from the Dark Angels. Because the fact of the matter that both of them go out of their way to straight up say, no we're not, stop saying it, nope, wrong, I don't buy that one bit. This is overcompensating to the nth degree. Another reason is that if you take a look at their paint scheme as well as their iconography, they bear a stark resemblance to the Dreadwing, one of the 6 wings of the Hexagrammaton, which the Dark Angels used during the Horus Heresy. The Dreadwing were known for destruction. They were the destroyer carters of the Dark Angels and wielded weapons and tactics and an attitude that left nothing in their wake but ash and dust. And we consider that after the Horus Heresy, they kind of just disappeared, and when you further consider how the goddamn Star Phantoms fight, well, you know, A plus B equals C and all that. But how do the Star Phantoms fight? Taken from Imperial Armor Volume 10, The Badab War Part 2. Following the destruction of their homeworld of Harkonneth in 120 M40, the Star Phantoms became a fleet-based chapter, slowly rebuilding their strength and participating in numerous conflicts and interventions across the Segmentum Obscurus. It was during this period the chapter came to further specialize in fleet combat and mass assault operations from near orbit. A favorite tactic of the chapter being the coordinated use of large numbers of drop pods of varying types and classes, including weapons platform types such as the Death Storm, as a key part of their strategies. It was during these years the chapter earned a merciless reputation for the indiscriminate use of firepower, often inflicting wanton collateral damage on their targets during civilian insurrections. This reputation was further cemented when the chapter took part in the Macarian Crusade. The Lord Solar himself is on record as having judged the Star Phantoms as unsuitable for tactical close support of other Imperial units. Yeah, the Star Phantoms are known for absolute destruction and carnage. The Star Phantoms are one of those units that you do not deploy next to people. You do not deploy them to rescue civilians, you do not deploy them in defense, you do not deploy them in logistics. No. The Star Phantoms are deployed to destroy something. Not only that something, but everything around it in about a 20-kilometer radius. You do not send these guys in if you need subtlety or delicacy or stealth. You send them in when you need no witnesses, no Russian motherfucker. That's when you send in the Star Phantoms. And this level of absolute destruction has earned them a lot of ire. Basically, in every single instance they have ever been deployed, if it is any type of civilian world or anything of the sort, it's just dead. These guys have such a high civilian casualty rate, it's madness. The problem is though, it's never done in a malicious sense. It's not like these guys are running up with chainsaws and power axes and carving up civvies. No. It's literally the case of automated destruction. It's a very mechanical aspect to that, where it's just like, we're going to blow up everything in a 30-foot radius, and that's that. But then that begs the question, hey Brad, how come no one has really sanctioned them? Well, because they keep to themselves really. They don't really do all that much. They don't worry about chapter politics or imperial politics or anything of the sort. They have their mission, they have their duty, and they stick to that. Also, it helps that they don't really do civilians all that much. Also, it helps that they don't really work with civilians all that much or other imperial forces. 90% of the time, they're not dealing with any type of Imperials. They're off killing some type of Xenos or heretic and just absolutely obliterating them. And when there is no collateral to damage, then it's just damage, baby. Damage is good. The problem is the like 10 to 20% that we actually have of them working with Imperials, all casualties. So yeah, it's a case of statistics, not really showing the whole truth, but still, that's a goddamn high KDA, let me tell you that much. But another quirk about the Star Phantoms, they're actually really good at fighting other Astartes because of their nature of sheer range destructive firepower. Again, a lot of their stuff is pure fire downrange. As we mentioned, they love using automated weapons, such as the Deathstorm drop pod. The Deathstorm drop pod, for those who don't know, is basically a mechanical drop pod meant to plop down, and it has no marines, it just has a fuck ton of bolters and ammunition. It is eradication of a mechanical nature, pure and simple. And if we consider that a good chunk of Space Marines like to get up close or like to get tactical, having an absolutely massive amount of firepower pound home, yeah, it makes sense. And that firepower is further supported by their Devastators, because when normally each company has 2 squads of Devastators, these fellows exchange a tactical for a Devastator squad, meaning they have 3 whole squads of Devastators, packing firepower. This is a massive increase over normal Space Marines, because of 5 more las cannons you will definitely feel. A prime example of this was in the aftermath of the Macarian Crusade. TLDR of the Macarian Crusade, you had Lord Solon Macarius, big dude, Alexander the Great basically, did a whole video about him, it's 2 hours long, go give it a watch. But he essentially does the whole Alexander thing, conquers a bunch of the Imperial territory, and then dies. And then his generals, the Diadochi, they basically decide, right, we're going to fight and cover up the South. A la Civil War version 190,000 something. Basically, every single force was fighting against each other, including Space Marines fighting other Space Marines. And the Star Phantoms were fighting the Marines Malevolent. Don't worry, more about those bastards later on. And during this time, the Marines Malevolent were so absolutely, brutally destroyed by these guys, they were nearly wiped out. Period. The Star Phantoms fought them in such a manner that they were nearly rendered extinct. And when we consider it, it makes perfect sense. The Marines Malevolent are known for not having anything. They basically have to scrounge and steal their equipment because no one likes them. We'll get to that in a minute. And when you got Space Marines who don't got nothing versus Space Marines who think that the term excessive firepower is an understatement, well, you get annihilation. And that's what the Star Phantoms did. As to why they're dicks, well, they just don't care. They will kill anything and everything. They will annihilate, period. If you are an Imperial citizen or an Imperial guard and you are serving with the Star Phantoms, your fatality rate is well into the 90s. And they just don't care. Kinda like the Doom Warriors in that scenario. Shrug of the shoulders. Shouldn't have been standing there, Lamau. But my house was there. Shouldn't have built your house there, Lamau. But it's on this planet. Shouldn't have been on the planet, Lamau. They just don't care. And that attitude of death and destruction and just not caring, very dickish. Also very dickish in terms of the Dark Angels, just saying. But regardless of how destructive and how dickish the Star Phantoms may be, they are effective. And again, it's not like their main prerogative is them working with Imperial civilians or anything. So their effectiveness versus civilian death rate is actually pretty high. Kinda like our next chapter, the Minotaurs. Ah yes, the Spartan Space Marines of 40k. And just like those old Lacedaemonians of ages past, the Minotaurs are very, very brutal. If you ever wondered what on earth would loyalist Iron Warriors look like, it would be these guys. Well, to be fair, they are a bit more on the excessive side of what the Iron Warriors would be, but you know, they're close enough. The Minotaurs are a mysterious chapter. We don't really know much about them, but it's believed they are part of the Cursed Founding, though there are conflicting sources of when exactly they first popped up. But regardless of when they first popped up, they proved themselves to be effective and brutal. When you think of brutality in Astartes, you think of the Minotaurs. But it's not really a wrathful brutality, nor is it a raging brutality. It's a cold iron efficiency. They will destroy their foe utterly, mercilessly, until it is done. And such brutal efficiency has garnered them attention. For in the time before they were founded, and the time before their reappearance of the Padab War, they went through a transformation. Essentially, they went from being your stock standard ordinary Space Marine chapter to being a Space Marine chapter so kitted out to the nines that they basically rivaled a first founding chapter, and made people wonder where the hell did you get all this fancy goddamn tech, boys? Lo and behold, it turns out that the High Lords had taken a liking to these young little fellows, because they are efficient. Thus, the Minotaurs essentially became the High Lords' personal Space Marine chapter, being their enforcers. If you pissed off the High Lords, well, there's a good chance the Minotaurs would come a-knocking. That was until they tried this bullshit with Gilliman, and he smacked them properly upside the head. Because your Greek Space Marines are badass. Just like real life, they ain't gonna win against Roman boy. But as to why these fellows are dicks, well, I don't really need to tell you why. The Minotaurs have a bit of a kleptomaniac streak. Basically, after a fight, if the previous owner is dead, or even if they're still alive to be frank, if it's there on the field, they take it. because Lamau, you lost, you don't need it anymore. They also don't really care about anything. It's not necessarily that they're disrespectful per se, more so they'll just give you a polite nod, and if you expect anything more than that, they'll tell you to go fuck yourself. They are not really ones to initiate shit, but if you start anything, you don't want the Minotaurs coming and knocking. Because they won't just come knocking, they will come running, and they will take you, the door, your house, your cat, your wife, and your goddamn minis, and they will do whatever the hell they want with them, because they're the Minotaurs. And there have been several examples of this sheer, ruthless, painful brutality. The most famous example being during the Badab War, where they were first introduced. And this is the main reason why people think they are dicks. Because while there are several other examples of them being brutalistic towards civilians, other space marines, every goddamn thing in between, they made the cardinal sin of fucking with everyone's favorite Lamenters. They beat the Lamenters so goddamn bad and stole so much of their shit in the aftermath, they permanently cemented themselves as being a poster child for hateful bullshit when it came for Space Marines in Warhammer 40k. Because do you want to know what's worse than kicking everyone's favorite dog, kicking everyone's favorite puppy? A sad puppy that can't catch a break. And the Minotaurs, they simply just don't care. Because why was the puppy there in the first place? I am now going to take his squeaky toy. This is now my squeaky toy because I won the fight. Again, they are dutiful in that they won't start shit, but if they get sent to do something, there are no really any rules. They are going to get the job done, regardless of how they get it done, regardless of how many people die, and they're going to take what is their due for good service. It does not matter about literally anything, even the other honor and code of Space Marines, such as the Usain incident. Taken from Imperial Armor Volume 10, The Badab War Part 2. The action from which the Minotaurs gained most infamy during the Makaran Heresy was by far the near destruction of 2 Imperial Space Marine chapters who had become locked in conflict. These chapters were the Doom Warriors and the Inceptors. Formerly allies in the Makarian Crusade, they come to blows over a matter of honor and were embroiled in a long-running and highly protracted conflict. Under predetermined rules of engagement in the Usain system, with the 2 combatant chapters refusing calls to end their battle and aid with the pacification, the Minotaurs were dispatched to sunder the 2 apart and to end the strife. Caring nothing for the causes or rights of the 2 chapters, the Minotaurs attacked in full force, catching the combatants unprepared and decimated both chapters with their initial strike. Overmatched and broken, the Doom Warriors fled the system almost immediately in a barely organized retreat. However, with most of their warships either destroyed or captured in orbit, the Inceptors found themselves trapped on Usain before the Minotaurs' wrath. Relentlessly and systematically, the honored second founding chapter was encircled and slowly destroyed piece by piece until the last remaining Inceptor Space Marines were forced into a humiliating surrender. Fewer than 100 Inceptor battle brothers survived the Usain incident, while the Minotaurs stripped the fallen of many relics for their own armories and took the ravaged chapter's flagship, a Great Crusade-era armored transport that had served the Inceptor since the founding, as a spoil of war. That such an ancient and revered chapter, and a close sign of the Ultramarines, could be almost annihilated in this fashion, and with a tacit agreement of the High Lords, sent shockwaves through many of the Space Marine chapters who came to hear of it. The Minotaurs were denounced across Ultramar for their heinous atrocities, and forbidden to enter its bounds. Others of Guilliman's line have soon sworn vengeance on the chapter, should the opportunity arise, and honor permit them carry it out. And to me, this shows how much of a dick they are way more than the Lamenters incident. Because the Inceptors, while not as beloved by the Lamenters, were a pretty solid chapter. They were typical Ultramarines in Ultramarine business. People liked them, they were founded, they were respected. And the thing is though, it's not the case that the Ultramarines went in and slapped their shit about. You were fighting a stupid civil war over honor when you had work to do. That is a dereliction of duty, you deserve to get your shit kicked in. The thing was, they didn't do the Space Marine thing, which is after clearly won. Allow them honorable surrender. You maintain ties with them, you honor them. Why? Because they are your cousins in war. They are servants of the Imperium. The Minotaurs did not fucking do that. They won, and they continued winning until they literally ransacked the chapter. In essence, the Minotaurs used this as an excuse to basically pillage a friendly Space Marine chapter. They annihilated the chapter to near death, stripped all of their arms, armor, equipment, vehicles, and everything, Essentially, on that day, the Minotaurs were not Space Marines. They were opportunists. And I think that sums up the Minotaurs quite well. They will never do anything to jeopardize the Imperium. But, when given a chance, they will milk that son of a bitch for every goddamn thing it's worth. And they will continue milking it until there is nothing left. And it does not matter who gets in their way. Space Marine, Imperial Governor, Citizen, hell, they even fucked with the Inquisition time for time. Because when you got the backing of the High Lords, you got a hell of a leash to roam on. Again, that wasn't until Gilliman slapped the shit in and basically paid back the Inceptors tenfold, but he's a Primarch. Kind of hard to fuck with those. If only our next chapter still had their Primarch, perhaps they would not end up being like this. Next up we have the Iron Hands. Ah yes, a first founding chapter with a panache for being unique. You'll already know about the Iron Hands, so I won't go on and on about them, but they have a battle cry. The flesh is weak. The flesh in this case basically means common decency, common sense, understanding, empathy, sympathy, and anything that makes human beings really human. And when you know the history of the Iron Hands and how they're basically depressed and don't want to feel anything because feelings hurt, Lamau, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. Being a first founding chapter, the Iron Warriors have a lot of lore to them, and they are very, very, very dickish in everything they do. There's a conspiracy in the community that someone at GW just doesn't like the Iron Hands, and for the longest time they were written as the bad guys in a lot of their books. I'm not kidding. There was a good period whenever you saw them with other Space Marines, the Iron Hand was always the dick character. They were very, very one-dimensional, and rather grating really. You never wanted to root for an Iron Hands because, well, yeah, they're just dicks. And this ranges from a variety of things. Being confrontational, argumentative, arrogant, never talking with people, never dealing with people, and just doing all types of nonsense. We have accounts of them straight up starting civil wars, them stealing technology, them fighting against other Imperial forces, them executing entire civilian populations, servitorizing entire guard regiments, and executing guardsmen for not doing good enough. The Iron Warriors are just dicks. But the one example I want to show you is one that is, in my opinion, the very, very worst. And granted, this was, by the chapter's own admission, a very bad part of the chapter in which they did not approve and promptly ejected afterwards. But these were still Iron Hands. They were from Medusa, they went through the process, they sung the praises of the Omnissiah, and they still did this. But context. The Iron Hands, together with a chapter known as the Hospitallers, Sons of Dawn, were battling a fleet of Xenos, and the Imperials were winning. It was at this point that the Hospitallers chapter master decided to lead the coup de grace, and took the bulk of his men from his flagship and decided to board the enemy. The Iron Hands decided to use this opportunity not to support their fellow battle brothers, but rather to do something else. And thus, the battle brothers of Clan Garsak decided to pay a little trip to the flagship, which had no more than 2 squads led by a single venerable ancient, known as Galvaro. And what happened next? Nobody expected. Taken from Voice of Mars. In a final blast of stabilization jets, the 3 lowered onto the hurriedly cleared landing block aboard the shield of the Guard Emperor. Tonsured serfs in billowing white surplices, bearing the Hospitallers cross approached. Bent against the downwash from the Thunderhawk's cycling turbofans, a thick-necked mortal armsman led them out. He wore the same devotional garb as his brothers, but under a black breastplate and bracers, a ceremonial broadsword strapped across his shoulder. He was forced to jog to keep pace with the tech priest that scuttled towards the gunship's rowing. The lowering ramp. The Magos had prostrated himself on the deck, just as the embarkation ramp rattled home and locked. "You are welcome aboard my charge." He looked up from his position of abasement as the first Space Marines clumped down the ramp. "The reputation of your chapter as machine whisperers and masters of artifice precedes you. Pray inform Iron Father Christos that his munificence will be recompensated in commensurate measure." Jagal regarded the prostrate human uncomfortably. "Merkala Fran has left the ship. Is that correct?" "Aboard the Inviolate Zeal, Lord, yes. To take the sword to the unclean vessels of the Xenos." "How many Hospitallers remain aboard?" "2 squads, I believe." The Magos glanced inquiring to the almsman, who spared a nod. "And Venerable Galvaro, does he remain upon the bridge?" "Yes, Lord." The Magos sounded confused. "Do you wish to see him before I take you to the drive chamber?" "I do," said Jack Hallen, and unlocked his bolt pistol sidearm. The bolt overshot the gaping Magos and punched through the almsman's breastplate. It detonated, blowing the mortal's torso inside out. The almsman's own chest shielded the other serfs from the blast, but the gory eruption stunned them long enough for Jack Hale to shift aim and fire again. They were close-packed, unprepared. The 4-shot burst exterminated them all. "What are you?" Burr shot the Magos dead, a single round from the hip. "I could grow accustomed to this," he said. Jolly Hall was uncertain whether he meant forcing entrance to Allied vessel or murdering tech priests in cold blood, and decided not to inquire. He swung his aim 90 degrees, short-range helm aspect scanning the embarkation deck for threat pings. The Hospitalis hadn't left so much as a single Storm Eagle behind. Brog had made a disappointed sound, as the rest of the Iron Hands trampled out of the 3. "An easy mission is a mission accomplished," Thorn chided the neophyte. "It will not be easy," said Jarling Hell, his boots making a red mess of the Hospitalis' welcoming party, as he strode for the exit hatch. He blink-clinked a rune in his helm displays, passing off a section of his augmented consciousness to replay Christus' Simulus log in the background. "It is a long way to the bridge, and Galvaro would be waiting for them when they got there." So, the Iron Hands kind of went off the rails and attacked their fellows. The question is why? Did these guys just turn traitor? No, but that would have been better. You see, they went on there to get something in particular. That being Venerable Galvaro. You see, one of their veteran sergeants had been mortally wounded and was dying. Thus, since he was so beloved by the company, they decided, right, let's make him a dreadnought. They didn't have any spare chassis laying around. So where on earth could they get a Venerable Dreadnought chassis? Yes, the Iron Hands committed heresy, attacked their fellow Space Marines, killed an Adeptus Mechanicus adept, several armsmen, serfs, and even Space Marines, all to steal Venerable Garrow. This Venerable Dreadnought was a staple of the chapter. He had lived for well over 1,000 years, and was considered by the chapter to be their spiritual heart and cornerstone. The Iron Hands went up to his ship, shot all his boys, proceeded to yoink him, rip him out like a used fucking condom, toss him to the bin, and implant their own dude in his chassis. Now I need you to understand this from the point of the Hospitalis. You're allies, right? While you're off finishing the Xenos, doing the job, doing the duty, you come back and you realize, wow, these guys ransacked my ship, killed my boys, stole basically my great-great-great-grandfather, then yoinked him, stabbed him, killed him, and implanted it in his own dude, and stole a bunch of shit along the way. The Iron Hands are dicks. And again, while I said this was one company that would eventually be excommunicated by the chapter and condemned, this doesn't change the fact that these were still Iron Hands. These were still their guys, and they still did this shit. I tell you what, there's an Emperor's Children fan in charge of GW writing, and he is fucking pissed about the Iron Hands, boy, because this is unfucking precedented. Committing heresy to steal shit. Absolute madness. And some people are thinking, okay, Brad, what the hell else could top this? How on earth do you get worse than intentionally committing heresy for such a stupid reason? Simple, my dear fellow. Committing heresy for no reason other than you just can. And that is when we get to number 1. A lot of you were expecting this, as you should. Now some of you may question whether or not these chapters should even be on this list, whether or not their ranking should be here, and whether 5 should be 2, 2 should be 5, etc, so on and so forth. But there is one thing that every single one of us can agree without a single shred of a doubt, is that number 1 is indeed, undisputably, inarguably, 100% correct. And ladies and gentlemen, the most dickish Space Marine chapter of all are the fucking Marines Malevolent. The Marines Malevolent are basically an inside joke at GW at this point. They are the worst of the worst of the worst. In every single story they have ever been in, they have always been dicks. They have always been unlikable, they have always been hateable, and they have always done shit that made you question why they were even Astartes. These guys are hated by everyone. And it's not just in the community, it's in lore too. The Marines Malevolent are one of the few Adeptus Astartes chapters that have no allies. No one at all wants anything to do with these bastards. Every single Space Marine thinks they're dicks. Every single Imperial agent thinks they're dicks. Every single Imperial organization hates them. So much so that they are one of the very few Space Marine chapters that the Mechanicus has put an embargo on. They are banned from getting any type of Adeptus Mechanicus item. No one will willingly trade with them. They are on the fucking Mars's blacklist that every single ForgeWorld knows. Do not give these motherfuckers anything. Why? Because they are dicks. To say that the Marines Malevolent have burned bridges is a fucking understatement. At this point, there's no city left. The whole fucking river is on fire. Everything is cooked. But the question is, why? Why do these guys exist? Why are they so much dicks? And once I could go on and on and on about the time they built their hospital, the time they betrayed their allies, the time they killed those civilians, the time they stole from the Admech, the time they stole from an Imperial Saint world, I could carry on, and we would be here all goddamn day. But rather, I want to use this time to truly answer the question, why are the Marines Malevolent like this? Now, a simple thing is just to say, oh, GW wanted to make the bad guy, good guy Space Marine chapter, right? Because, you know, you need something to clearly, 100%, undoubtedly show people these guys are terrible news. And it's at this point that a lot of people will come through the woodwork and simply say, oh no, the Marines Malevolent are pragmatic, they're good, they're great, you know, like they're dicks, but hey, they get stuff done. And this is where I gotta disagree with you on that. The Minotaurs are brutal, but efficient. The Iron Hands are dickish, but efficient. The Marines Malevolent though, they're just wasteful. I mentioned with the Minotaurs don't start shit, but they do finish shit. The Marines Malevolent, they are known for starting shit. They are the pure definition of abrasive, arrogant, and combative. They will start shit for any reason whatsoever. The amount of times they have caused conflict purely for the fun of it is mind-blowing. Again, I'm really surprised the Inquisition hasn't sanctioned them or anything really. It's surprising me these guys aren't considered renegades. A prime example for us comes from the book The Iron Kingdom, part of the Dawn of Fire series, where the Marines Malevolent are sent to go and gather some supplies from a night world which recently just lost their princess. The Marines Malevolent make such a fuck up of this that they end up causing strife and conflict with the Night House, which ends up fighting the fucking Indomitus Crusade because of it. Why? Because they just started shit because they could. Why? Because they just acted like dicks. They took what they wanted without so much as even acknowledging the existence of the Night House. But why? Why are these guys like this? And from the same book, we actually get kind of an answer. Taken from Iron Kingdom. He had crossed the Rubicon Primaris, emerging on the other side. Changed. Greater. He knew what he was. A psychopathic warmongerer. He was no mindless slayer, but he had killed innocents that were in his path, and slaughtered men who had tried his patience. Once a guardsman dared to touch the pommel of his sword. It was a brutal thing. A thick bladed gladius, but the hilt had a large, flawed emerald in the pommel, and this caught the trooper's eye. He wasn't attempting to steal it. The man could scarcely have drawn, let alone lifted it. It was reaching towards something beautiful. Reynard had killed him, then and there. A cross-cut blow with the self-same sword had severed the upper and lower portions of the guardsman in diagonal. He had gone on to murder the trooper's comrades, his entire squad, as a solitary lesson for the others. No one challenged him afterwards, not even the regimental officers. He had merely gone on his way, untroubled, his actions as automatic as repairing his armor or sharpening his blade. It had not been the first man he had killed for a slight, nor would it be the last. A warrior of the White Consul's chapter had challenged him to an honor duel after Reynard had made some insulting comment about his provenance. A sword thrust through the Space Marine's gut rammed upwards and into his heart had ended the contest whilst the challenger was still mid-utterance. He hadn't lingered to face the consequences. His opponent was imminent. Again, he gave it little thought. Just another fool who thought battles were glorious and war could be honorable. A veteran of 100 wars, Reynolds' roll of dishonor was long. Flint grey hair, hard blue eyes. The Belzarian technologies had done little to soften his looks. If anything, the myriad of scars were more pronounced. Not for the first time did Reynard wonder at just how bad things were if warriors like the Marines Malevolent were being offered advancement and reinforcement. And here, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the crux of it. Why are the Marines Malevolent dicks? Why are they the worst Space Marines? Why are they so just terrible? It's because of how they think. And the truth is, they just don't care. They accept that the world sucks. They are essentially depressed, for lack of a better word. They have no hope. Yet, unlike the Doom Warriors, who embrace apathy, the Marines Malevolent embrace hatred. It's literally stated that hatred, malevolence, and vitriol are core tenets, virtues to be admired. They are broken men. They don't care about anyone or anything. They're depressed, and truly, they believe that in the grim darkness of the far future, what this is just terror, horror, pain, evil. So, if they are facing malevolence, they will become malevolent themselves to fight it. Now don't get me wrong, this is 100% incorrect way to think, but it does make sense. They are flawed, they are hurt, and again, they decide to cope with it by projecting their hatred and self-loathing onto everyone else. And again, to the fanboys of the Marines Malevolent, look, you can like your boys, by all means like them. I actually think they're a nice note in 40k, because it shows you the different way that human beings cope, and that while Space Marines are indeed Space Marines, they're still human. But don't come here telling me they're the ideal Space Marine, or they're pragmatic and they're super efficient, they're great. No, they're not. They are wasteful because they don't care. They don't worry about Imperial resources, they don't worry about building ties, they don't worry about alliances, they don't worry about doing anything. You cannot tell me that the chapter who has fucked itself over so much by being dicks for no reason to the point that they can't get resupplied by the Mechanicus is pragmatic and efficient. But they just don't care. Because why should they? This galaxy hates them, and hatred is everything. So they will hate, and they will hate well. And this is actually something that causes them to be less effective than normal Space Marines, because they don't fight like normal Space Marines. They don't act like normal Space Marines. So when they are facing other Space Marines, they usually get their shit kicked in. Against the Star Phantoms, they were found wanting. On Armageddon against the Salamanders, they were found wanting. And even in this same book, Reynard would face another Space Marine in a duel, and he would be humbled. And I think that part of the reason why the Marines Malevolent shoot first without asking any questions is because they know they're in a bad spot. They know that because of their fuck-ups, they don't have anyone backing them. They are a cornered predator. So, when you know that there is no second chance, you strike hard, you strike fast, and you strike with no remorse. Yet ironically, by doing that, they further dig their hole, again and again and again. The Marines Malevolent are an interesting case. They are dicks, not because GW just wants to make a funny, but rather they show something about the Imperium, that if you look into the hole long enough, soon the blackness will stare back, and you will not like what you see. And like I said, I actually like them for that. They're a good look into the world of the Space Marines, a different aspect. And you know how much a slut of I am for dichotomies. But again, don't tell me these ain't anything but fucking dicks that are just basically getting by the grace of GW at this point, man. Come on, come the fuck on. Even the admic don't want this bullshit, and they still deal with the Iron Hands. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Let me know down below. Do you agree with my list? Do you have any other obscure chapters that you think are dicks? And what do you think about the Marines Malevolent? I am a salamander, so rightfully they can go kick rocks and fuck right off. But again, doing research into them for this video, I gained a new appreciation for them. They're a different aspect of a Space Marine and a different point of view, and again, I love shit like that, so it's always nice to see the subtleties in 40k from time to time, rare as they may be. But yeah, love to hear your thoughts down below. But I want to say a massive thank you to you guys for watching, but even more massive thank you to my awesome members and Patreons. Shout out to my awesome Lieutenant Tier members, Mr. Eddie V3, Miss Majora of the Void, and Miss Tori. Shout out to my awesome Sergeant Tier members, Mr. Damiak, Mr. Warsmith.Fireheart, Mr. Andy McGee, Mr. Bowen, Mr. Sean IRL7, Mr. Matthew Merrill, Mr. Sergeant Cossack, 68W173D, and Mr. That Guy. Shout out to my Cripple Tier members, Mr. Tremeo the Math Kitty, Lord Rosarius, Mr. Tech Priest Toaster, Mr. Bowen, Shauna Smithers, The Gentle Salamander, The Wench of Warhammer, Major Doshinet, Mr. Edward King, and Mr. Overanalyze This. And finally, but certainly not least, shout out to my private tier members, Mr. Thomas Moslons, Mr. Ivan_SVW, Mr. Monkey Man, Mr. Michael Hayeda, Mr. Diego Castro, Mr. Fortis Unum, Mr. CMD Nay, Mr. Eric Massaro, Mr. Dom Marek, Mr. Ken_Sakura333, Mr. Adrian Von Furen, Mr. Morley Bankrupt, Mr. Matthew Peter, Josh Lee 1320, Mr. Adrax1, Mr. Ethan Elam U71, Kiri Khan. I love you, I appreciate you guys so very much. Someday memberships get a bunch of awesome benefits, behind the scene access to these videos, early access to all this nonsense, special roles in the Discord, and you get to support this channel. But remember, this always be free. And you boys just being here, god damn it, I love it, I appreciate you, and I would love you just the same. Mwah! Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've been the General Bradley 101. You've been beautiful, awesome, and amazing people. Thank you all so very much for watching. And what should I say, hello there, boys and gals. And I will catch y'all next time. Dismiss Rangers. Cannot wait to get all the Marines Malevolent fanboys being like, oh no wait, but it's actually, no, bro, like your chapter for what your chapter is, not what you think it is.